And so the historic range has changed, and this is just a brief thing of what I found. Back, I guess, in about 2005, 2006, this was what most tree books showed, and even that they called the historic range. And so I started looking at older books, and I found these by accident. The older the books I found, you'd see a larger range, some of it going a little bit further in Missouri, and I thought, wow, there's some even in Alabama. And I thought, how could they be here and skip all the way over to Alabama? Well, I was hitting the edge of the iceberg right here, and there was more knowledge coming. So you go back a little bit further in time now, the 1950s, 1960s, a little bit bigger range in Alabama, a little bit larger range here. And so I talked to a lady that wrote the book, Trees of Alabama. She told me, she said, well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I wrote a book about trees of Alabama. I have been in every single county, and I've talked to people that remember these trees, but they're all gone. And said, you're wasting your time if you come down here because they're just not here. And so I bumped into that time and time again. And so this is a real old one from 1907. Real old tree books usually would not have maps. And I found 3 different maps that look just like this. And this one's from 1907 right here. And so the tree had a larger range at one time. And so, I'm going to go back one. Okay, and this is one of my favorite quotes. We have a gentleman that lived in Oklahoma with the Cherokee Nation. And Mark, you know, raise your hand up right here. This is Marc Dunham. He's going to do a presentation a little later on.
He's actually a cousin of mine.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, he told me that too. Yeah, so he's going to report on me, or you can report on anything going on with him. But anyhow, he told me on the phone, and he said, I remember the trees when I was a kid growing up in Oklahoma. And he said, I used to walk in the woods with bare feet. My skin was tougher back then, but I'd step on those burrs, and boy, would it hurt. They're the sweetest nut you ever did want to eat. And so I quoted him exactly what he said. He said, I remember back in 1963, and by the way, the black will reach Oklahoma and East Texas a little bit later. Fred's going to talk a little bit more about when the black reached here later on. And he said they grew on a hillside, down a gully, on the bank of a creek. They just grew all over the place, but not real abundant. In Oklahoma, the biggest ones I ever saw was 7 to 9 inches. And I would love to see another Ozark Chinquapin again, but I don't think I ever will. Well, me and AJ were talking about this. You know, we've got 2nd and 3rd growth forests right now. So what he's talking about was after the timber had already been cut. And so I talked to him on the phone, and actually, when I got off the phone, that was back, I guess, in 2006 or 2007, I mailed to Tino Burnett seed. And I've sent them to him a few other times. And then he went out with his children recently, and they went out and on that hill behind his house up there, and I sent him some grow tubes. I mailed those to him as well. So him and his children actually planted these trees. So when I read these hundreds and thousands of emails and letters I get, this is real inspiring about what we're actually doing here. For every person in here, I kid you not, there's probably 500 people out there that are doing work or being a member or doing something to help restore this tree. And so for me, you know, I've talked to everybody about writing down something. Since you've been with the foundation, what is something that you've seen happen that you're real proud to be a part of or experience it or see it? And we're going to be posting these in here and out the hall, so I want everybody to read these. Well, here's one of mine right here. And I told Tori the other day, I said, there's not enough paper in this room for me to write down every one of the things I've seen. It's just one of the neatest things. And you know, it's I get the biggest kick out of this. And so this article right here, A.J. Hendershot submitted an article to Missouri Conservationist Magazine, the most widely distributed magazine in Missouri, and they had this quote in there too. Is that not right, A.J.? Okay, so what happened to them? Well, to understand them, you've got to understand what happened to the American chestnut. And the American chestnut, about what, 1 out of 4 trees in eastern U.S., I guess, was American chestnut. And here's a real large one in Tennessee. We had a blight that actually came to America probably in the late 1800s, but it's first officially documented, I think, in about, what, 1906, somewhere around there in the Bronx Zoo, okay? And they estimate that we lost about 3.7 billion. That's B with a billion. It's probably larger than that. That's the mature trees. So it went from one of the main trees in our eastern forest, and it was reduced to what you see like here on the right. This is Ozark Chinquapin, and you don't find the trees anymore. So we had this tree that was a real dominant tree, and it was reduced to a shrub-like status like you see right here. And this photo, this is another thing. I was listening to what people were telling me, and I started looking, and this gentleman right here works in Arkansas right now on Buffalo River, and we went up near the border of Missouri and Arkansas, and I saw my first Chinquapins up there. And it was a forest that had all kinds of little stump sprouts and all. What is bad about this, though, you can't see it. It was pouring down rain that day. Right behind us here, there's a bulldozer up here, and they were dissecting this hill off still in the plots for people to build homes on. And that was, the other hills around us did not have them. And I asked him why it was that on this hill we had Chinquapins and not the others. And he said, well, that hill over there used to be a farm in the 30s. This hill over here used to be a pasture. And so this particular hill here, even though it had been logged over, it was never completely cut over. They did not change it. So you still had stump sprouts there. And there's an old Chinquapin log right there and swatted by. So it went from a very dominant tree to a shrub-like status. And it's one of the largest mass extinctions that we've had in modern history. Very few people know anything about that. So here in Missouri, it's a little bit different. This neat photo from the National Park Service. So these are shortleaf pine logs. And so in the late 1800s, they began to cut all the timber out of here, and it would change forever our landscape. Even where I work at, we used to have a spring that looked like Blue Springs. It was real deep. Now it's filled in with the runoff, the gravel, and the sand from them logging and clearing all the hills, making them completely bare. So this is kind of a neat photo. This is one of the first trees I went to check out. Me and my family, we made like a trip down to see Angie's folks down in southern Arkansas. And this guy right here, this is the largest living blight-resistant Ozark Chinquapin on planet Earth. And this is in Clark County, Arkansas. And I've talked to this guy on the phone. We drove all the way down there. This was the Grand National Ozark Chinquapin. And you can't see this, but the thing is about 21 inches DBH. And right behind it is another tree. It's not sucker sprouts, it's a separate tree. And this is right by a road. And in 1991, I believe it was, a friend of mine collected nuts off of this tree. And then, I'm sorry, let me back up a little bit. In 1990, he collected nuts off of this tree. And it was cross-pollinated with the one right behind it. In 1991, a tornado came in and blew this tree down over the road. And the crew came in to open that road up and had to cut that log into. But some of the seedlings from this are actually on the research test plot y'all saw yesterday. Those genetics were saved. And when I went down to Arkansas, I got seed from him, and Larry Burford's the guy's name that actually saved those. And here's a real large log right here out in that forest. Those will lay there forever. They're real rot-resistant wood. And so now today, this is kind of what you see. I don't know if you can see it very well, but instead of being a tree, you'll see stump sprouts with these sprouts coming up, and they'll get about head high, a little bit taller, than the blight will come back in and kill them back. And so I was told that, this is what you're going to see. There are no trees. You'll only find blighted stump sprouts. And because the canopy will close in on them, there's very little or almost no nut production. So logging practices and later the chestnut blight would wipe out the Ozark Chinquapin. Today only blighted stump sprouts remain this once important tree. So about every 4 to 6 years this blight will come back and it goes through the cycle again. And there's another photo. And here's one of a piece of log that's laying there. There's some Chinquapin leaves. And you can see how heavily they're eaten by the insects. Not only are the nuts favored by wildlife, but a lot of insects love to eat on the leaves as well too. Well, that little log you see laying right there is no longer there. They had a wildfire there, and it was real detrimental to the stump sprouts, and that log is gone. So I, like a lot of people in this room, we do fire management, and I know Eric, y'all do that. I'm sure Corps of Engineers land too. And Eric, you want to tell everybody where you're at first?
Yeah, I'm at east of here at Wapacoa Lake. It's a Corps project. We got about 40,000 acres over there next to it'd be just east of Poplar Bluff. I don't know if anyone knows where that's at.
Well,
We've got 2 test plots.
yep, and a little bit later on, he's going to tell us a little bit about that too. So I, like a lot of other people, we do burns. Well, what happens is you've got dead fuel on the stump sprouts. You'll have blighted sprouts along with green ones. And some places like Big Sugar, over where you guys are at, John Logan told me after that one fire we lost about 30% of our stump sprouts. And these stump sprouts, they have the energy of those roots. And these trees are like a red oak. They've got like they live 80 to 110 years. There's exceptions to that, but that's for the most part what you'll see. And like some places like Big Sugar and Hobbs State Park, we're even losing the stump sprouts. They're running out of energy, and we're losing those as well too. And so we're losing stump sprouts or even evidence every time we have a fire of these trees. And so how important was the tree? Well, it was real important, had a significant impact on people and wildlife. And where it occurred is a keystone species. And I've got a question for you, Andy. Andy, what leaves are these right here you're looking at? If I showed that to anybody in the eastern U.S., what would they tell us?
Chestnut.
They'd say American chestnut. This is an Ozark Chinquapin right here. And so we've done a lot of DNA work, and we have reason to believe that it may be, AJ, tell us, I've said it so many times, but what do we think about the age of this species?
This is probably the most ancient of the species, and any of them that have come from an ancestor. The Ozark Chinquapin is that common ancestor for the American chestnut and for the Allegheny Chinquapin.
And nobody's talking about that. And that's, the American Chestnut Foundation has a lot of state chapters, and they spent literally millions, correct, on what their work. And on a shoestring budget, we've got this tree living here in Oklahoma and Arkansas. This is our native chestnut, and it has a lot of things going for it that people that have been working to restore the American chestnut have not even experienced. And so we've got a truer treasure here than what we ever realized. And I'm going to skip off just a little bit because Andy came all the way from Syracuse, New York, down here for the field trip yesterday and the meeting. He wins the award for traveling the farthest. And he told me something yesterday that made me feel really good. We went out to the research test plots, real hard scrabble, rocky, dry soil where a lot of trees struggle at, and we do very little. I may water those trees once a year, maybe once, and they're very rugged. And so, the plot you saw, we had trees that were planted there in 2010, 2011, 2012, and I talked to you this morning. 2013 is when we collected. Was it 2012?
They would have been planted in 2013, yeah.
Okay. The trees I showed, we had one tree that was way over 25 feet tall from Oregon County, and it was planted in 2013.
So this is
and y'all saw, some of y'all saw that tree yesterday, and that's incredible growth. So compare that to American chestnut. What kind of growth do we see with the same time? Do you care to?
Yeah, well, from what I was seeing yesterday, the Chinquapins definitely grow faster, and we can see some pretty impressive growth on American chestnuts. They can do a few feet a year under really perfect optimal conditions, but the dry, rocky conditions would definitely slow them down. They live in similar habitats, but we can grow that fast for sure.
Yeah, and so he said if they baby them long, he said if they fertilize them, keep them watered, some of them might make it that. So these trees are so adapted to the Ozarks. And by the way, I planted American chestnuts on our plots, and they all die in July and August. They cannot take the drought. And so like where Mark's at over in Oklahoma, they're just extremely rugged. And once you get them going, once they reach a height of about 7 feet, they're just very, very tough, and they hang in there. So we've got good genetics going on with that. So at one time they're very important.